Okay, so let's begin. It's 5:30. We're all busy people. So today we are here to talk about how to write a research proposal. And let me start sharing my screen. Let's see if, okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I assume many of you are here today because you have been told that you have a deadline for research proposal coming up, and sometimes it's very difficult to turn out a full-on research proposal because we're still unclear about the focus of our research. We might still not be entirely settled on a research question, so it's indeed a very challenging undertaking. And I'm here to acknowledge this, and I'm also here to provide some help if I can when it comes to my own experience of writing research proposal and sharing what I know of research proposals. So what is a research proposal? Okay, so maybe before I give you my version, one or two people can maybe raise their hands, or they can put it in the chat and share with us what you think a research proposal is and why we do a research proposal. Anyone?
Can I?
Please.
Yeah, it's just my opinion that a research proposal or research paper, that's our main question, what we are going to write about, and then what we would like to research.
Very good.
Maybe we can say that maybe it's a problem. Maybe that's a problem for me, and then I would like to find the find a way how to solve that problem.
Excellent. So I think that you are absolutely right that one thing that a research proposal does is that it states the problem or the issue or the question that you are researching, right? Okay, and somebody else put in the chat. Okay, I like that. There was another piece that came in the chat, and somebody said to get your research validated somehow. So, and definitely these are two pieces of a research proposal, or rather the two reasons why we write a research proposal. One is to state the issue or the question that we're going to research, and one it is to prove to ourselves, first of all, and to others that this question is valid, that it is worth researching. So a research proposal essentially is it's an overview of the research that you are planning to conduct. So a research proposal, obviously, chronologically, it comes before you do your research, right? So you have a plan, and basically it is your research plan, right? And the purpose of a research proposal is to convince your reader that that this project that you are about to embark on, it is well thought out, it is valuable, and it is feasible. And now I would like us to unpack some of that language. So first of all, it says the purpose of a research proposal is to convince your reader. So who is your reader? Who is that reader of a research proposal? Who? Guys, your ideas. Who is the reader? Who do you need to convince?
A person or a student who interested in a particular topic, for example, who wanted to read our articles or our topics.
But do you submit a research proposal to your fellow students? Who do you submit your research proposal to?
For our professor or
Exactly, to your professor. Most
professor.
often it is your thesis advisor who is going to be with you for a year, right? And they need to know that you know that they are not wasting their time, right? That you actually do have a plan. And then Tursunbay said in the chat, said commission. So a lot of the times, of course, research is not only done at a university, right? For as part of your graduation requirements, it is also done in a research institution, right? It is, and then you have donors, you have people who are funding your research, right? And you need to convince them that this research is worth their time and money. Okay, so here are the three words that I also wanted us to think about, that you have to convince your reader, you have to convince the faculty member who is working with you, or you have to you have to convince, as somebody said, a commission, a group of people, right? That that this project is well thought out. What does well thought out mean, do you think, in this context? It is well thought out. Okay. Ms. Barnaeva, please.
From my perspective, that a well thought out project means that it has all components of a proposal, like title, abstract, and bibliography. And I imagine like this is proposal, and the surveys, some data, and thoroughly analyze, and at the end you write your findings and your conclusion. That is something new. I imagine that this is proposal that is something new I have found and explored, that I want to announce to the world, and I propose to them that this project will help for their better life. Something like that.
That is in very, very high level of detail, and thank you for this. I have a much simpler version, which means that you have to convince that your reader that you have a plan, that you have a good plan. You have a good plan for your research, right? That, as Ms. Barnaeva said, that you have a question, that you have the methodology, that you have the literature lined up, that you have all those pieces to make this research happen, right? And so if people see that, that maybe some of those pieces are not as strong as they need to be, for example, maybe you have a good question, but your research methodology is not that great, right? Then, well, you need to go back and think a little more, right? So now let's talk a little about valuable. And Ms. Barnaeva touched on it already, but what does it mean that this project is valuable? This research project is valuable. What research project can be called valuable? Aha, excellent. Okay, Ms. Alibaeva.
I guess valuable means that the outcomes of the project, the results, could be used in real life. So maybe the research will come out with some strategies, that can be used by practitioners in this field. Or maybe it's a very relevant topic that hasn't been researched enough, and there is a need to research this topic.
Beautiful, beautiful. I don't think anybody could have put it better than you just did. And Ms. Bekbaladova.
Yes, I agree with Elmira. So valuable means essential topic nowadays, how much it is important, and at the end of research, what suggestions maybe we can give or make a conclusion.
Mhm.
So it means valuable.
Good. And we have another comment in the chat. Somebody said it is a socially important topic.
Yeah. So,
It is true. Not all research is socially important, but yes, of course, social importance, does lend value to a research project. Okay. And the last thing, the last adjective that we have here is feasible. And that is something that, in my opinion, people don't think about enough. They think a lot about the value of the project, but they don't think, a lot of the times they don't think about feasibility. And can we talk a little bit about this, about feasibility? What does it mean when a research project is feasible? Anyone? Aha, Ms. Alibayeva.
I guess feasible means that you will be able to conduct this research. So you have enough resources, enough money, you can find the participants, yeah.
Yes.
You can find like the material to study.
Excellent.
So,
excellent. And there is only one thing that I can add to this, and that you have enough time, right? Because you may have all the resources and participants in the world, but you have just 1 year to write your thesis. That's all there is, sometimes less. And actually more like 6 months, right, between a proposal and defense. A lot of the times it's just 6 months. So you have to consider, can I do this, right? Okay, so yeah, and as Mr. Farhad said, time and resources available for it to make it happen. Yes. Okay, excellent. Let's move on. And I don't know why this computer is so bad at moving on. Okay, so the one thing that we need to consider, and that's an issue that we touched upon last time, is the centrality of a research question. It is so important that you have a research question before you start on a research proposal. If you don't have a research question, do not even go there, okay? So, because a research question, it is really a centerpiece of the project, right? It is what drives everything. It drives the direction of your research, it drives the methodology, it drives the literature that you're going to be using, everything, right? So if you have any time at all invested into coming up with a research question that you can be excited about, that is really worth spending your time on. And the one thing that I emphasize, that was also emphasized in our last workshop conducted by Hirat Manshir-Aliyev, is that a research question is absolutely not the same thing as a topic, because a topic can be very broad, and all sorts of research questions can emerge from the same topic. For example, if a topic is air pollution in Bishkek, right, then you can have a question like, how do Bishkek strategies for air pollution compare to those of other Central Asian capitals? That's an interesting research question. Or a different one. How does Bishkek's air pollution affect residents' decision about where to live? Another research question, completely different from the first one. And then, how have environmental issues been discussed in Bishkek's most recent mayoral campaigns? That's a political science question, right? So these are all completely different questions from the same topic. So as you can see, it's really so not enough to have a topic, right? So concentrate on getting a research question. And this was covered in our previous workshop, but I will just touch on it very briefly. So there is a finer criteria for a research question, and a research question has to be feasible, and we talked about feasibility. It has to be interesting, first of all, to you, but also, of course, to sort of your professional group. it has to be novel. There has to be some sort of a new angle or new take on this, or it has to address something that hasn't been addressed before. Maybe you're doing it in a different context. It has to be ethical, right? And it has to be also relevant, right? So you can't ask a question that is outdated, right? It's a question that has to be relevant to our times, right? We're not going to ask the question of whether the earth is round. We know that the question has been answered a long time ago, right? It is no longer relevant. So stick to what is relevant to the scholarship as it is right now, okay? So now let's get to the meat and potatoes of our proposal. And so that is the general structure. These are the parts, the component parts of any research proposal. And that is, first of all, there is an introduction. In an introduction, you are stating why you are researching and why it is important. So it's a good place to house your research question, right? But it's a little bit more. An introduction is not just a place where your research question lives. It has other functions as well. We're going to go over that in a little bit. So the next part is literature review. And I think that probably some of you have started hearing that word from your professors, literature review. You have to do literature review. Ooh, the literature review is due on November 1st. So, and that is basically so you know what has been written on this topic or how this research question has been addressed by other people. Because as we just said, the question has to be relevant to you and has to be novel. So if you are trying to produce a piece of scholarship that is relevant to our times and that introduces something new, you have to know the field. You have to know what is going on in the field, what other scholars have been saying on this. So then the methodology, right? So basically, how are you going to answer this research question? That is basically what the methodology section is for. And there is a conclusion, which once again sort of talks about the ultimate value of this research, be it a social value or be it theoretical value and so on and so forth. And then there is a preliminary list of sources, right? Which is what some people call bibliography. So that is the general structure of your proposal. So there are 5 parts, right? So the preliminary source list, it's just a list of literature, but the other 4 you have to write out. And we are going to talk about how this can be done. So the first part. So as I said before, this is a place where you house your research question or your research questions. Sometimes you might have 2. But it's not enough to just say, well, hello, this is my research, this is my research question. You have to put that question in some sort of a context, right? You have to show how research question emerged, out of which conditions this question has emerged, and why it is important to answer this research question, why it is important to concentrate on this particular problem or this particular issue. Okay, and there are some expressions or key phrases that we typically use in that section, such as, this study will examine, or the goal objective of this project is to do this, this, this. This project seeks or aims to do this. I hope to shed light on this. So this is significant because, so that is, that is what the introduction is really for. And since I couldn't think of a better idea, I brought in my own research proposal. That's a research proposal that I wrote about 4 years ago. To be honest, I have never conducted this research, but the proposal is still there. So, and since my degree was in pedagogy, the subject was cohesion and collaborative relations among middle school students in contemporary Kyrgyzstan, right? So basically, I was kind of interested in, because when I was growing up, right, which was forever ago, cohesion was very strongly emphasized in, in that educational environment, right? We were told how important it is to be friends with other people, how important it is to get along. Cohesion was a huge value. It was a huge social value. Therefore, but the times have changed, right? And and when I started writing my research proposal, the first thing that I did is I described the focus, right? I described the context and the focus. I basically said that following the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union, right, and the detachment of Kyrgyzstan's educational system from the Soviet system, then obviously the new state had to look for its own educational values, right? If they couldn't use the same Soviet values that they always did, right? And then of course the free market economy and free market thinking came along, and so that's where competition became an important value, right? And so the ability to collaborate or the ability to compromise, it is considered actually to be a fairly strong value in Western countries. It is considered kind of a marker of achievement. A successful person should be able to collaborate, and a successful person should be able to find compromise. But, and I wanted to know to which extent this old Soviet emphasis on cohesion, on collaboration, on friendship, to which extent it still survived in Kyrgyzstan 30 years later. So that's what I wanted to know. And I described this in this context section of my introduction. So, and then I posed 2 research questions. And I said, this research will therefore focus on the following 2 questions. What are the commonalities in the practices of homeroom teachers who supervise so-called close-knit, or as they call it in Russian, дружные classes, right? So I wanted to know, how do, if a teacher has a class like that, right? What do they do to build that, right? And the second question that I had is, to what extent does it enhance students' academic achievement? If the class is close-knit, if the students are getting together well, if they're spending a lot of time together, and so on and so forth, are their grades higher than in classes that are not as cohesive? So those were my research questions. So as you can see, I provided the context, I asked research questions, and finally, the importance of my of what I thought, at least that's what I thought was the importance of that research at the time. I said that in answering those questions, the study should yield not only groundwork for the systematic methodology of developing skills of interaction with others, but also establish the correlation between these skills and academic achievement. So, here I highlighted in red the expressions that people can use when you are talking about the importance of your research. So those were the 3 components of an introduction, right? The context and the focus of the research question themselves, and the perceived importance of this research to others. Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, I will have to ask you to mute yourselves because somebody is rustling. And yeah, okay. So, and the next section of a research proposal is literature review. And as we have said before, if you are writing a work of scholarship, you really have to know the state of the field, right? So what is already known about your research questions? What theoretical frameworks have already been applied or are relevant to these questions? What data have other studies found that might be relevant? So, and of course, very importantly, is there a hole in a scholarship that you can help fill, right? So perhaps, obviously, right, there is a place where you can insert yourself as a scholar. You can find a question that people didn't talk about before, or you can find a particular angle, a way of looking at a problem that hasn't been done before or hasn't been done before much. Or you can find that these studies have been done, let's say, in the American context, but they have not been done in the local context. All of it has value, right? If you can find that, that would be really, really great. So that is the purpose of a literature review. And so here are some of the key phrases that we might use in that we might use when we are writing a literature review. You can talk about what other scholars have argued. You can talk what previous research has found. You can talk about what other studies have examined. But another interesting thing about a literature review is, please do not take other people's scholarship as gospel. Just because they published before you doesn't mean that they're right, right? And you may very well find fault with previous authors, right? You might find that maybe their methodology was questionable, or maybe that their scope was very limited, or something like this, right? So, and when you say, however, these studies fail too, this is the place for you to insert yourself as an innovative scholar. Okay. Or this expression, one area that has not been studied is da 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 da. Okay. And or you can talk about how how little is known about this particular issue, this particular question, this particular context. Okay. Here are some examples, and once again, from that research proposal of mine. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, you have to suffer through it for another maybe 30 minutes or so. So the literature review. So how do we discuss a theoretical framework, right? So the way I did it was I mentioned Anton Makarenko, who is was a very famous pedagogue. He was did both theoretical and practical work, and he mentioned that he said that the study of a children's collective is really the foundation of pedagogy. And as you can see, I also mentioned here that to this day, his system is featured prominently in textbooks for pedagogical colleges. So so that particular theoretician, even though he lived 100 years ago, he still is very prominent. It is still very likely that people are trained under his system, right? And then, of course, you might find a particular theory that you feel is would be the theory that you can apply to look at this problem, right? And in my case, since I was studying cohesiveness, I dug up this theory of social cohesion. So as you can see, we may turn to the theory of social cohesion that has since been gaining popularity. But the interesting thing is, like I also said, if you see holes in or lacunae in the scholarship, don't be shy about pointing it out. Like, for example, in this case, it says that it has been gaining popularity despite the lack of a generally accepted definition. There is no one definition of social cohesion, but everyone is using the theory. That's very interesting, right? And also it examines cohesion primarily at a societal level. So they look at whole societies. They don't usually look at smaller groups. And so here I mentioned the name of a person who was the first to specify dimensions measuring social cohesion. And later on, we are going to talk a little bit about how important it is to specify what it is you are measuring. So that's basically how you discuss your theoretical frameworks. And this is how you point out the lacuna. Lacuna are the holes in the scholarship, right? And this is how I did it. I said the current body of academic literature, although considerable, is still in need of a current and operational concept of close-knittedness that can be applied to post-Soviet school setting. So I was like, okay, here's my chance to, to do research in an area that has, in my opinion back then, had been understudied. So, okay, so much for the literature review. And then we are moving on to the methodology, which is how am I going to answer this question, right? So how am I going to carry out this project? Ms. Bekbalatova, you have a question. It's a good time.
Yes, I have a question about literature.
Yes.
For example, I have chosen the topic like inclusive education, and I have to go to the city, nearest city, and visit some boarding school for children with special needs and ask them some literature. But if there are some literature in Russian, can I use in Russian language literature and just in bibliography indicate them?
Hang on. First of all, I think we are, there are three things that I wanted to bring up. Okay, so you said your topic is social cohesion. And to be honest, I haven't heard the research question, right? So it would be nice to know what your research question is. Second of all, when you were talking about going to visit the school children, that is not literature review, that is methodology. That is already, that is the next step. That is conducting your research. Literature review, it's a review of what other people wrote on inclusivity, right? So that is
no. I mean, if I will look through literature in Russian language.
Yes, it's absolutely acceptable. I mean,
and I have to indicate them in reference, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And obviously, the more languages they know, the bigger is, the greater is your ability to do literature review, right? Unfortunately, I'm, only fluent in 2 languages, and so my ability to do research was limited to 2 languages. If you know 5, then your literature review is going to be that much more wonderful. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So let's move on to methodology, right? So methodology is, what is your research design, right? So how are you going to find the answer to your research question? And it's not as easy as, as it sometimes seems. I'm going to go and ask people. Well, no, that doesn't always work, right? How will you collect your data? How will you analyze your data? And it's very important to think, what is your justification for your choices? Why didn't you choose another method? That is something that is part of that methodology section. You don't just describe your research design and how you're going to find the answers. You also have to argue why this method is the best for this, in order for you to procure an answer to that particular research question. Okay, so, and also it is very important in this section to point out any potential problems with your methodology before other people do, right? Because you have to, because most research methods, right, they have some limitations. And I think it's very important for you to see what those limitations might be, right? And this is, so don't be afraid to point it out when you are describing your methodology, because if you don't, somebody else will, okay? So, and it actually shows that you are a thoughtful scholar. It shows that you are not thinking from a variety of different perspectives. So here are some useful expressions, such as the study will use or utilize, these methods. The survey will ask participants about. The goal of the interviews is to recruit participants. I will. Such and such method will be used in order to do this. You can say that, like, for example, this group of people might be overrepresented in the sample, or there is a limitation to this method. As I said, don't be afraid to examine any potential shortcomings of your research methodology. That's important. And here is what I did. So I was justifying my methodology. So the first thing that I did is that I said, "Ooh, other people have done it before." So I said, a strong case for transfer of practical experience in educational research has been made by scholars such as da 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 da. So I said, well, other people have done it. Other people have argued it. It's an accepted method, right? And then I said that since there are a lot of issues with the educational system in Kyrgyzstan, especially when it comes to formulating a coherent educational policy, then we really have to rely on individual experience of other teachers. So if I go and interview teachers, or if I go and observe teachers, that might actually yield better results than a macro study. So that's a micro study. The macro study, I would be looking at a more sort of a global, like statistics or something like this. Okay, so in this case, I argued that it's much better to look at things at individual teachers' experiences. Okay, so once you have justified your methodology, it's time to describe your research methods, right? And basically you describe what you will do. And I said, to that end, I shall observe lessons and other homeroom related practices of 10 homeroom teachers of 5 Bishkek junior high schools. So, and also it is, and we have touched on it already, it is very important to explain what you will measure and how. So I was talking about close-knittedness, right? About this, what they call дружный класс in Russian, right? But I can't just say close-knittedness without laying out what it is and how I'm going to measure it. And so I said that it will have the following dimensions: attitudinals. So I will be measuring students' attitudes. I will be looking at their behavior, and I will be looking at the temporal dimension, which means shows how much time they're spending together. And when it comes to academic achievement, I'm going to measure it through their grades. So that is something that I assume is being covered in your research method classes, right? But it is still important an important part of your methodology description in your research proposal, and that is this explanation of what it is you're measuring. You have to give precise definition of what it is you're measuring and how you will be measuring what it is you're measuring. Okay, and as we said before, describing the limitations of your methodology. First of all, it is not very often that we invent our own methodology. So if you are borrowing your methodology from somebody else, say it, okay? So as I said it in my proposal, the methodology borrows elements from this 1988 study. And also, I acknowledged potential limitations of my methodology. I said one limitation of this research, as in all micro-level research, is the question of an extent to which the results can be extrapolated upon the larger population. If I study 10 teachers in Bishkek, it doesn't mean that it's true for the whole country, right? So that is a limitation of my particular method, okay? And I said it before my professor did, so good for me. Okay. So in a conclusion, and as we said before, in the conclusion, the purpose of a conclusion is to state and restate the ultimate value of your of your research project. So what are the real world implications? Or as somebody said, what is the social value, right? Or what is the theoretical value of this research, okay? And here are some phrases that we can use. You can say that the study has implications. The findings of the study can be applied to da-da-da-da-da. You can talk about that, what this research will help us understand, and so on and so forth. And this was my conclusion. I said that if the results of my research suggest that development enhances academic achievement, it will, validate some of the existing methodologies. So this is a kind of a theoretical value, right? Actually, both theoretical and practical value. Suggest other more culture specific to Kyrgyzstan methodologies. That's practical value. Shift the focus of educational specialists and reformers. Once again, practical value. And I mentioned should be of particular value to the research related to the role of educators in the formation of social relation. So that was theoretical value that I saw emerging from my research. So to basically sum up, right? Here is our research proposal checklist, right? So an introduction, which houses your research question and houses the context for that particular research question. And it also houses the issue of why this particular research project is important. Literature review, what others have said about my research question, what niche my research can fill, what hole in the scholarship there is. There is the methodology, what is my research design, and what is the best way to, I'm sorry, this computer has a life of its own. What is my research design? What is the best way to answer my research question? Why did I choose this way and not another way? What are the potential shortcomings of my methodology? All of those things, what am I measuring? How am I measuring? All of it goes in the methodology section. So we have the conclusion. And we just said, what is the ultimate value of this research? What is the practical value? What is the theoretical value? And then there is the source list, which is the bibliography. Okay. So, and a research proposal is a big undertaking. As we have said before, I looked at my original research proposal. I would just wanted to know how many pages it was. It was 8 pages. So, so the thing is, you don't have to do it all in order, even though, as I said, having a research question is really essential, but you might want to just start by putting together a preliminary source list, right? Or you can write a little bit about the methodology, or you can, you don't have to write it all in order, right? Introduction, literature review, methodology, conclusion, list of sources, right? You can switch your attention to a different section that you're ready to work on. And a literature review generally is a good place to start, in my experience, but you might, have a different idea. Maybe you might first want to describe the context for your study. Okay, so, and perhaps, there is a different task that you could work on instead, right? So if no ideas are coming to your mind, well, then sit down and format the bibliography, right? It's nice mechanical work, but you will definitely get something done. If really, really nothing occurs to you, start talking, right? Talk with your advisor, talk with your peers, read. So do something to kind of get that process, that thought process going. And just to touch up on some further resources, we have examples of all student theses, which are available on the library, on the AHJ's library site. I just have to warn you that not all of the theses are good, but the more theses you read, the more you will be able to understand sort of the general structure of how these things go. There is a resources for students page on the work website, and it contains a number of guides and examples, including examples of literature reviews and examples of research proposals and so on and so forth. We have, the work has a YouTube channel that by the way, this talk is going to be on, and it has a number of academic writing workshops. Obviously, you're welcome to come to the work to book a session with one of our writing tutors. A writing tutor might not be able to advise you on, for example, the validity of your methodology or the novelty of your research question, because they are not, they may not be in the same field as you are, but they will be helpful because one of the things that they're trained in is a sort of this dialogical thought process. You might be able to, after talking to them, you might be able to think of some things that you have not thought of before. So, and that I believe is it, at least for, sort of the presentation part of the workshop. I will be happy to take any questions if you have them, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Charlotte explained that everything is clear. Thank you, Professor.
Oh, it was.
And still, now for today, my takeaway is that the question should be relevant and big and important.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to change my old question that I have prepared. But still, I have one question. Can I take more than 2 or 3 questions, or only one, an important question for my research?
I had 2 research questions in every bit of research that I have done on or written proposals for. I had 2 research questions, but they were related to each other, right? So, for example, in the first, as you can see, I wanted to know which practices teachers are using to encourage these close relationships between their students, and the second, if those close relationships really are of any use when it comes to academic achievement. So they were closely intertwined. So I think that it's possible to do, definitely possible to for your research proposal to house 2 questions, just as long as they are all related to each other and that relationship is very clear.
And how many pages do you expect us to write the research proposal?
That's
not exactly you, our commission, or whoever wants our research proposal.
Honestly, that is a question for your professor, right? It could be, they might be asking for 2 pages. Like I said, my research proposal was 8 pages. So please, but I feel like if you are doing a really good job, if your literature review is substantial, if you have a good solid methodology and you're describing it well, it's definitely going to be more than 2 pages. But that's a question best addressed to your professor.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Could you share the presentation of today's workshop on your Google Classroom? No, but this workshop, the recording of this workshop is going to be on the work YouTube channel. So that is so if you want the recording. If you want the slides, I can send them to Elizabeth Davis.
Yes, slides, please. We want, really.
Okay.
Usually after work I am tired, but tomorrow morning I will revise those slides, go through again.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. I have there are a few more things. Okay, excellent. And here Adman Sheraliyev shared a link to our YouTube channel, and they said, what is the next session going to be about? The next session is, Hirad, please help me out here.
Yeah, I think the next session is gonna be literature review.
Yes, how to do a literature review. No, the next session is going to be anti-plagiarism. That's the next session. And literature review is going to be on November 1st, I believe.
Yes. So October 20, yeah. Next is anti-plagiarism and then literature review.
Yes. So the next session is going to be on how to cite sources, right? How to avoid plagiarism. And the session after that is going to be specifically about literature review. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Thank you. And can you give some advice on how to quickly read all those resources and at the same time to work? That is too much we need to read.
Okay,
And
I
then
wish
realize-
I could tell you don't sleep, but this is not good advice. The one advice that I wanted to say is, that I wanted to give you is have a research question, because a topic, for example, such as inclusivity, is huge. So much is written about it. So if you have a research question, it will definitely help you narrow down what it is you're reading about, right? Because if you start reading on a topic, it's endless. Having a research question will really reduce the number of reading that you will have to do. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that is
All right.
better. Now I feel better.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a real pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And this workshop is going to be on our YouTube channel within a day or two. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank
very
you.
informative.
Bye.
Take care.